Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tom Orr, not Tony Gerderman, joined as always, but not as always, by Kevin Noon. Kevin? How's it going?
It's going. We learned Ohio State's bowl fate. We knew they were bowl eligible. Mm-hmm. We knew they were going to be in the New Year's Six. Where, when, why, what, all of that we now know. And I think there's a lot to kind of sort out as, if you're not playing in the playoff, in the 14 playoff, what are you really playing? And I think there'll be a lot of questions and hopefully some answers that come out of it here in the next, 25 days before the Cotton Bowl?
Yeah, 25 or so days. It is Saturday. No, not Saturday. It is whatever December 29th is. It is going to be a primetime game. It is a Friday. Okay, Friday, December 29th, 8 p.m., Cotton Bowl in Jerry World in Arlington, Texas. They're going to be facing the Missouri Tigers out of the SEC. Buckeyes and Tigers have not played since 1998. That was the home and home. 97 was the year of the Andy Katzenmoyer hit on Corby Jones in Columbia. And then, of course, 98, the return trip to Ohio State. Much less memorable game, the second one. But it is, this is a intriguing matchup, a top 10 opponent. Buckeyes ranked 7th in the final college football playoff rankings, Missouri 9. So this is a good opponent. This is one of these games that people are probably going to be pointing at and saying, look, this is, what a measuring stick. There's 3 games in the New Year's Six between the Big Ten and the SEC, Michigan playing Alabama, Ohio State playing Missouri, and Penn State playing Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl. So it's you have all the measuring stick stuff, but you also have the realities of college football in 2023, where the team that you saw on the field in Ann Arbor last weekend, in Columbus against Minnesota on Senior Day, is not necessarily the team you're going to see on the field in Arlington later in the month.
Right. Every year, as it seems like Ohio State is right on the cusp of maybe making the playoff, maybe not. It's like, well, who's going to opt out? Well, Ohio State is not in the playoff, so who's going to opt out? I mean, obviously, we're going to see some guys enter the portal, whether or not they stick around for the game. I mean, there's some flexibility with all of that situation, but who have we seen play their last game? I mean, and we could sit there and start going through names of, does it make sense for JT Tuimoloau to play? Does it make sense for Marvin Harrison Jr. to play? There's only one of these Big Ten SEC matchups where everybody is going to go in to play, and that is the Rose Bowl. When it comes to the Peach and when it comes to the Cotton, everybody's going to have to kind of come up with their own decisions. I think you can look at this as, is this going to be a preview of what 24 looks like at certain positions? Potentially. Are there going to be guys that want to sit there and go out and erase the taste of that loss to Michigan and play one more game? That's also quite possible. And maybe we get some insight on what some of these guys will have in terms of their draft decisions as well.
Yeah, it does feel like you're going to get that is news that typically starts sort of filtering out. The team just found out at 2:30 when everyone else did. That kid that popped up on the screen, and then everyone went, "Oh, okay, now we know." And so they have to now. They're going to have a team meeting. They're going to have a practice, and the team meeting is happening a little later on in the afternoon, and then that's where you're going to start having people make some of those decisions. It feels like forever ago that Ohio State last played in the Cotton Bowl. That was the 2017 season. They played USC. That is the first time you ever had an Ohio State opt-out. That was Denzel Ward, who dragged that process out all the way till basically game day before you really, really knew he wasn't going to be there. That was Jeff Okudah stepped in and started for him. And that's in that game. And Ohio State ended up winning. But now it's a very different process, because that was a little bit shocking. You always had the brotherhood, and no one would ever do that. I can't believe. And then, all it takes is missing the playoff once, and then everyone has a business decision to make. So we'll see where, how many of those guys do end up opting out this year. But whoever it is, I mean, Tony asked Ryan Day about this. This is kind of a little bit a half foot in the 2023 season, wrapping things up, finishing strong, whatever. It's also kind of, you go through bowl practice, you have opportunities for all these game reps for younger guys. Marvin Harrison may opt out this year. 2 years ago, Marvin Harrison got an opportunity because Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave opted out in the Rose Bowl.
Right. Chris Olave practiced with the team.
Mm-hmm.
That whole drama there. Will he, won't he, will he, won't he? But does that open up an opportunity for a Brandon Ennis or Carnell Tate or somebody like that to have a big chance to make a splash on a very large stage? These New Year's Six games, I mean, really almost all bowl games are in their own window. That's why bowl season goes on for like 84 weeks. But certainly in the New Year's Six, I mean, it is the first of the New Year's Six games, December 29th on this game. There will be that opportunity, but, I think a lot of the questions that we heard from Ryan Day were, what does the quarterback position look like? Because there were certainly a lot of people that had questions about that, who then went on to watch the championship week, and we saw some great quarterback performances. We saw some pretty awful ones too, if you were watching football on Saturday night as well. So a lot of stuff that I'm really curious about. I know people are saying it's a meaningless exhibition, but there's no shortage of interesting storylines that are going on, coupled with the fact that we're only a couple of weeks away from early national signing period.
Yeah, and there is going to be a lot of questions. I mean, there's been a lot of heat, obviously, about the quarterback position at Ohio State and the future of the quarterback position at Ohio State. Ryan Day, I would describe his answers as aggressively disinterested in talking about the quarterback position in any sort of meaningful way. He was asked about, is this going to be an open job next season? Do you go into next spring? And he was kind of like, that's a long way. No, next year's a long way away. What about the Cotton Bowl? Is this going to be, do you go in and Kyle's the starter? And even then it was kind of like, well, you sort of see what practice looks like, but didn't say no, didn't say yes, didn't say we're open to anything. It was just kind of like, we'll see what practice looks like.
Which would have been more alarming, though, that or getting the quote unquote vote of confidence? Because, we hear about that so many times, the vote of confidence that isn't worth the air that it's spoken into or the paper that it's written on, and it doesn't really mean anything. So, I was monitoring the chat during the live Ryan Day press conference, and I think there was a little bit of schizophrenia amongst people posting in there because nobody was quite sure what to make of that.
Yeah, it was kind of a non-answer, and a non-answer is usually a non-answer, and that's they may not know exactly what to expect, because you don't want to say you're throwing the quarterback competition open, wide open for this game, because then that's a vote of no confidence. But you don't want to scare people off by saying, no, you're not going to have, no, he's going to definitely be the guy. So there's a real tightrope to walk there, because you have three quarterbacks in that room right now. I'm going to set aside Tristan Gebbia for a moment, but you've got Kyle McCord, you've got Devin Brown, you've got Lincoln Keenholz, you got Aaron Nolan coming in about a month. You want to keep all of those guys engaged. You don't want to have, you don't want to lose anyone to the portal if you can avoid it. We don't know if they can avoid it. I mean, there's all of this stuff is sort of open questions right now. Not addressing it, sort of, I guess I don't know what else I would have expected. I do think you're ultimately going to have some kind of open the competition back up in the spring kind of thing. I don't know what to expect for this, because I was sort of thinking like maybe you go into this and it's, you go out and you give all three quarterbacks a little, give them all a drive or two, and let Lincoln Keenholz have a drive or two. He's going to get plenty of reps in practice. Devin Brown's going to get plenty of reps in practice. Do you do that? But the way Ryan Day answered it, it was job number one is to win the game, and you got to play the guy who gives you the best chance to win the game.
Well, I mean, we all talk about what Ryan Day's record is, and his losses have been against Michigan and in the college football playoff. If they come out there and they get too cute in the laboratory trying to do this, that, and the other and go and lose the game, then that narrative is gone, because they've, we're going to try and be equitable and split this up and split that up. And then you find out at the end of the day that, shoot, we forgot to practice. I mean, it's not necessarily the right approach for winning the game. Again, you get a neat trophy, you get to sit there and, do whatever with that, but, you need to get ready for next season. But do you no, I mean, you don't want to end the season on a 2-game losing streak.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you go back to the 90s, and that was an all too familiar feeling at the end of an Ohio State football season. Everything's going great until about November 18th, and then 2-game losing streak. Super chat from DW says, Ryan backed the wrong horse, play Devin in the bowl. I think they're going to play Devin in the bowl. I have yet to have anyone answer the question, back the wrong horse based on what? What did you see in Devin Brown's opportunities on the field that made you say, yes, this is clearly the better option? I have yet to have anyone actually point to, well, there was this. I am open to the opportunity, to the possibility that he may at some point be the better option, but I didn't see anything all season in the spring or in the fall that made me think clearly the best option based on fill in the blank.
Devin Brown is the best option because he is not Kyle McCord. That is what I think a lot of people there maybe don't want to say the quiet part out loud, but that is what it is there. If this is what his maximum is, if this is what we're going to get out of him, they should have played the other guy. Devin Brown was hurt toward the end of spring, didn't play in the spring game, lost some valuable time there, and really, in my mind, the decision was made there. And we can rewind to going into spring when I said I thought Devin Brown was going to win the job because there were 2 years of club control there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It never came to pass because the competition kind of went sideways at that point. But has anybody really seen anything out of Devin Brown to say, well, he certainly does this better, he certainly does that better? I think it's just kind of, well, I think that grass over there is greener. Well,
I again am open to the fact that he could be at some point the better option. Maybe he's the better option now. I have yet to see something that's like definitively, clearly, because I posted a picture of Lincoln Kienholz at Wisconsin just during warmups. Lincoln Kienholz on the field, just like, hey,
you blankster.
I post pictures of lots of players, and when you post a picture of Lincoln Kienholz on the field, everyone's telling you that this is the guy who should be starting. It's like he was just playing small school football in South Dakota last year, was not in for the spring, did not have any of those reps, has not been repping with the ones at any point during the fall.
QB1.
The backup quarterback is literally always the most popular person. That's just how football fandom works. But I think there is a little bit of a grass is greener. What's the next super chat?
Super chat, Mike Smith. I don't think he backed the wrong horse. I think the stables aren't as full as they may have been in the past.
Well, and that's an interesting point because I saw someone in the chat mention Quinn Ewers, and that Quinn Ewers was the right horse out of the 2021 class because he reclassified. Obviously, he was supposed to be 22, reclassified to 2021, so he came in the same year as Kyle. And
he should have probably sat Stroud.
Well, that's the thing. Walk me through the scenario where Quinn Ewers comes to Ohio State as an early enrollee and sits 2 years, because you're not playing him ahead of C.J. Stroud. You're seeing what C.J. Stroud is doing in the NFL right now. You see what C.J. Stroud did at Ohio State. You're not playing him ahead of C.J. Stroud. So you've got $1 million kombucha NIL dude, and he's going to come in and sit for 2 years? I don't think so. Texas was always going to be, he had been committed there at one point, home state school. Sark has plenty to offer, as you have seen. As soon as Quinn Ewers reclassified to Ohio State and was going to overlap with C.J. Stroud for 2 years, that really kind of shot big holes in the Quinn Ewers is going to be the future quarterback at Ohio State. And I will admit, I did not necessarily see it that way at the time, but I remember Tony, as soon as that happened, Tony asked me, does this make it more or less likely that he ever starts a game at Ohio State? And I kind of went, oh, no. And Tony was like very clearly like, and he was right. That was definitely the case.
He's going to cut that little clip and play it over and over and over again. So don't ever say that again.
DW says Devin's touchdown pass to Brandon Inniss was right on the money. That was in the fourth quarter of a game where Ohio State was up by 3 touchdowns, and they were going up against probably Purdue. Purdue's defense was not very good this year, and that was probably not Purdue's ones. I mean,
Tate Martell was 10 of 10, and
right. I gotta see it. Like, and I was in that game against Purdue. The goal line package, like, It was like he brought him in. I was like, okay, let's see what this looks like. He scored a touchdown at one point, and then he turned it over once, and then it didn't work, I think, the third time, and then that was kind of it. And it was just, you kind of saw it, but go back to the goal line play in that game where he threw once on the goal line in that one, and it was like he threw like 4 feet behind the receiver. And it was, again, not that he can't be the starter at Ohio State at some point, but I think there are a couple people who have really been banging the drum very loudly on this for attention purposes and have gotten people thinking gotten people real lathered up. And there was someone who tried to tell you 18 months ago they've already made the decision, it's going to be Devin Brown. Very clearly that wasn't true, but then people are committed to the bit, so therefore you kind of keep getting, it's all because it's a big conspiracy. I promise they're going to play the person they think is going to give them the best opportunity to win. That is how this works.
You know what Kyle hasn't done? Injured himself warming up.
Well, I would, it's really too bad that he got re-aggravated that injury, because he didn't have an opportunity to play again in, what was that, the Michigan State game, I think. Great. I would have loved to see more. Like, let's have more data on this. Right. But right now, there's no significant data available that suggests like this is clearly the best decision, not even a question. And I think Kyle is also taking a little bit of unfair heat, because you look at the last interception he committed against Michigan. He's throwing it to the right spot. The left tackle steps on the left guard's foot, which gets the left guard pushed back into him, so he gets hit as he throws, and that impacts the throw. Like that's not on Kyle McCord. That's not even necessarily on the left guard. That's sometimes a guy steps on your foot and then bad things happen. So I don't think Kyle McCord is CJ Stroud. I don't think anyone would argue that, right? But I certainly think he's, I certainly don't expect him to transfer out and go to a MAC school at the end of the season, because he's just not good enough. That's not really part of the conversation either.
Obviously, you have not been reading Twitter, because Twitter has said otherwise.
Yes.
And, I think that one thing I will say as we're doing this show live was this morning was the most unified I have seen hashtag Buckeyes Twitter in months. And it was all coming down to Michigan drawing Alabama instead of Florida State. It was coming down to all of these things. It felt like all was great in Mudville.
Yeah.
And, and now we find out about the Cotton Bowl, and there's a lot of people who are like, who cares anyway? But
and here's the thing. This is the last Ohio State football game for 9 months. So, I mean, I just did the morning show with Tony, and it was 362 days until the Michigan game next year, which means it's 280 something days till the first game of the season, which means, boy, that's a long off season. So you should probably consider enjoying the final Ohio State football game until the spring game, and then until next season. But it's also, I mean, it is, as we said earlier, a look ahead into the future, and you can get, this is a much more meaningful bowl game in some ways than it would have been 10 years ago, when it was just, well, it's the last chance to see fill in the blank. Like, this is an opportunity for, the bowl practices, the 15 bowl practices are such a big deal in terms of getting those young guys involved. Because Ryan Day talked about the fact that Gary Danielson, Nick told me, Ryan Day talked about the fact that it was this is an opportunity. You have kind of 3 separate pieces of bowl practice, which is, the fundamentals, and then kind of the middle, the meaty middle, and then like the actual on the scene game prep. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to just make sure we are not missing anyone. I don't think we've missed anyone.
No, I think we're good on the super chat so far. Okay. I've been trying to keep an eye on them.
Okay. In terms of the one piece of news that Tony and I did a podcast about, running back Evan Pryor hit the transfer portal, that it's not official until tomorrow. The portal officially opens on Monday, I believe. But, this is another example of the kind of guy who hits the portal, where came in very highly touted, 6th ranked running back in the class, Travion Henderson was the number 1 running back in the class, and just between injuries and a depth chart, just really was never quite able to get on the field.
Right, and remember, he got a little sniff his true freshman year, was out there in pass pro, just really not in the physical shape in terms of mass to be able to do much there. State of North Carolina did not play high school football in 2020, so he had not played since he was a junior in high school outside of Charlotte. I think he was from Huntersville, if I remember correctly. And it had always kind of been well, when's he going to get his shot? When's he going to get his shot? He's a great pass catcher. When are we going to get to see that? And we never really got to see it. So, your clock is limited, and I wish him the best. I mean, I'm certainly not surprised by the decision to go portaling with him. Just because a player enters the portal doesn't mean that they can't come out of the portal. But I think that in his case, I think he will follow through and find many suitors that are quite interested in him. We talk a lot about players, especially at lower classifications, enter the portal, careers are done. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to be the case there, but we'll see as portal heats up starting on Monday, and we already certainly have talked about a couple of names, Cameron Martinez being one, and Ohio State is also in pursuit in the portal as well, potentially on the offensive line, potentially on the defensive line, and maybe some other positions. One of the things Brian Day was asked about is, what about quarterback? Are you looking for a quarterback in the portal? Which certainly, I know vocal Twitter is all about.
Yeah, and the answer to that was kind of like I don't know, like it didn't sound like immediately. I don't, if the second coming of Joe Montana shows up in the portal, you'd be an idiot not to take the second coming of Joe Montana or C.J. Stroud or whoever. I don't think there is the second coming of any of those people, anyone even adjacent to those people in the portal right now.
That's not Cam Ward.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not Cam Ward. There was someone else who was in there who everyone was kind of pointing at.
Riley Leonard,
DJ Uiagalelei. Those are not.
Drake May isn't in the portal.
No. That's not necessarily the spot where they really need. If they upgrade the offensive line, you have that would be a significant increase, upgrade to the offense on the whole.
Absolutely. Because of just what Tom mentioned 5 minutes ago, the play where your tackle steps on your guard and everything else. I mean, the thought would be if you can make some improvements out there, get guys in their right positions and everything else, that's going to help everything. It's just like once Ohio State's secondary was able to get through some of its issues, the defense suddenly was significantly better. So, I'm expecting to see a very active portal season, both outgoing and incoming, but we'll get asked about every name that enters. I have been on text message whenever a quarterback goes in there, and I'm like, nope, still not looking.
At this point, you have a talented quarterback room, and whether you think Kyle McCord is the answer or not, if you bring in an outside guy, if you're a Devin Brown person, does that chase Devin Brown out? I mean, that could trade.
If you bring somebody with multiple years, you could lose 3. You could lose McCord. You could lose Brown. You could even lose Keenholz. So it better be a heck of a name if you're going to go 1 for 3 at that point and have that quarterback, Aaron Noland as a true freshman, and then maybe having to go out and get a Chris Chugunov type, somebody that has some experience, but is not going somewhere looking to necessarily absolutely positively be the starter.
You mentioned the secondary a minute ago, and that reminded me of one of the really interesting storylines for this Cotton Bowl, which is, we don't know. Denzel Burke is a potential opt-out. Jordan Hancock potentially could be an opt-out. You're getting Davis and Ignosin back for another year. But this is a Missouri team, Brady Cook at quarterback, real talented group of wide receivers, including Luther Burden, who is a name that Ohio State fans will remember from recruiting.
Theo
Weiss. Mookie Cooper plays a good bit, which is the name Ohio State fans will remember from Ohio State. Former Missouri native, Ohio State slot receiver in the 2021 class. He came in with Marvin Harrison and Jaden Ballard.
It sounds right, but it all runs together.
But this is a really talented, Josh Proctor, 60-year guy. He could potentially miss the bowl game, and we'll find out who's going to skip and who's not. But this is going to be a really interesting test for some of the younger Ohio State defensive backs. If you do have some of those guys opt out, you got Igbinosin on one side, do you have Jordan Hancock? Do you have, you've got Jair Brown, you got Jermaine Matthews probably getting an extended run. Who do you have playing at the safety spots? I mean, this is a, do you get Lathan Ransom back for the bowl game? That's another question.
Maybe not for Missouri. I mean, at that point, I mean, if they were playing, they're playing Washington or something in the Rose Bowl, then I mean, I think that there's a more concerted effort to try and get back at that point. But you got to wonder what the situation will be with that. And then, oh, by the way, you also have to be able to play run defense against Missouri. We're way ahead of ourselves, but I believe, if I remember right, they have like the leading rusher in the SEC as well. So, and it'll be interesting to see if a player that's kind of on the fence or whatever is like, well, maybe one more game, one more tape out there could sit there and really be the difference if I do this or not. But we'll see, as we're probably going to get kicked out of here shortly.
Yeah, we are probably right on the verge of getting booted out of here. So we will wrap it up right now. We'll have plenty more time to talk about the Cotton Bowl game against Missouri. Whatever news transpires in the transfer portal, both incoming and outgoing. Also, the early signing day coming up on December 20th. We're just over 2 weeks away from that. It is going to be quite a busy month for Ohio State football coaches as they travel all over the world, while also trying to figure out the bowl prep for Missouri, but also at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we'll be talking about the game, talking about the recruiting, talking about the X's and O's, talking about the transfer portal, all of that stuff. We'll have, I'm sure, quite a good number of shows for you this month as well. Buckeye Weekly, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, Big Me Kickoff, the Skull Session podcast that Mark and Kevin will do on recruiting should be, and generally have a good bit of content around early signing day as well. Let's get to let you get to know some of the newest Buckeyes on the day that they are signing with Ohio State and making things official. So that will do it for now. Thank you guys all for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.